Good morning. It's 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time, and we're in downtown Canton, Georgia. With me today is Phillip Price, who is an author of a brand new book, but he's also, what I first heard him as, a legend in Georgia law enforcement. We're going to learn more about that. First of all, a couple of announcements. It's a partly sunny, unseasonably warm day in Canton, Georgia. And it's going to be busy today in downtown Canton, Georgia. From noon to 6 is the Christmas market, when the merchants on Main Street and the mill on Etowah will be having all kinds of promotions and sales. And then at 3 to 5 p.m., the man himself, Santa, will be at the gazebo in Canton Park, right in downtown Canton. And then, if that was not enough, at 6 o'clock p.m., the Christmas parade starts. And that's going to feature classic cars, floats, carolers, you name it. So it's going to be a busy, busy day in downtown Canton. So we're going to start the day with an interview, like I said, with Phillip Price. Let me just read a little bit from the bio in the back of his book, because it says more than I can. He's a native of North Georgia. He was sworn in as a Georgia Bureau of Investigation, we call that the GBI here, agent back in 1978, and he served with the Canton Police Department and the Georgia State Patrol. He served through the Miami Vice days, as it was called, and some of you know what that means, and some of you probably don't. He's had many assignments, including the 1996 Olympic Games, when he had a big role in that. He retired in 2006 as a special agent in charge with the GBI, and he's currently employed with the Sheriff's Office and is heading up, correct me if I'm wrong here, a 3-county narcotics task force. Two county right now. And he has published recently his first novel here. It's called Mountain Justice. And let's talk about Mountain Justice to start out with. If I want to go buy this book here at Mountain Justice, what in the world am I going to get into here?
Well, it's a story, and it's based on an actual investigation I was involved in the 1980s, but I've updated the time frame and fictionalized the characters, and because it gives you more of an opportunity to talk about the thoughts and the feelings of the characters rather than trying to do something that's just a historically accurate piece. So I tell the story about a young budding GBI agent who is on his first public corruption investigation. And it goes from there. And it's based in Gilmer County, which is about probably 60 miles north of here. But that's an area that I worked when I was coming up in law enforcement.
So Georgia is a really interesting state. Like a lot of states, you've got a big metropolitan area, Atlanta. So this agent is kind of used to maybe the metro and the suburb, and now he's going up into the rural area. And Mountain Justice is a little bit different than Metro Justice, I take it.
It's commonly said there's 3 Georgias. There's Metro Atlanta, there's the northern part of the state, and then the extreme south part of the state. And they're completely different. And the thing about the rural parts of Georgia has been that they do consider themselves remote from the seat of government, from Atlanta, and sort of
and proudly so, from what I can tell.
Yes. So interesting thing, the corridor from here north, Pickens, Gilmer, and Fannin, never officially seceded from the Union in the Civil War. So they consider themselves not part of all that controversy.
Okay.
And they've always been sort of off to themselves. And some of that's because of the geography, because prior to 515 cutting a major road into the north, they were sort of remote. It's hard to get to. So they did consider themselves sort of an island, isolated, and duly so.
Yeah, it reminds me of a place in Mississippi that did the same thing, and they call it the Free State of Jones. It was an area in Jones County where they said we're kind of different, you know. So let's talk about your career. I read this in here, but what was probably one of your most interesting cases that kind of really got you
Um,
And let me interrupt and say, I'm interested also in your role in the Olympics back in
sure.
1996.
Talk about that.
Yeah, talk about that a little bit.
Okay, well, I I had an interest in communications. So in 1990, I was tasked with building the GBI's statewide radio system. No state agency at that time had a statewide radio system. So I got drawn into that. We established a network that was the first in the state. That was where you could talk from one end of the state to the other if you needed to. And so when the Olympics came along in '94, I was tasked with doing the communication system for the Olympics.
Wow.
So I handled setting up and establishing and making work the radio communication system for all the law enforcement except the federal agencies that were involved in the '96 Olympics.
Wow.
And we actually still also had the FBI bomb techs and the GBI bomb techs were on the system that I put in place. So I had access to every venue in the Olympics, which was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So I could go any place, and so I was able to see a lot of things and be involved in a lot of things. And of course, everything changed that second week when the bomb went off. But the first week, it was a great spirit, great feeling. A lot of people from all over the world. You'd stop and talk to folks and interact, and so it was a great opportunity, but very challenging. And as a result of that, I got to go to Salt Lake City and help with the consultation on the Olympics in Salt Lake, the Winter Olympics.
Okay.
So it was a great opportunity, a lot of fun, a lot of work. I was supposed to have had 2 days off every week. I ended up with no days off after the bomb went off, and so it was very challenging. But that's part of this job is that you can't predict what's going to happen, and sometimes you think you're going to get a day off or a week off, and that just doesn't work out.
Yeah.
It's just part of it.
Well, you mentioned setting up a radio network, which leads me to think about technology and law enforcement in particular. So how has technology changed since then, and what do you see today compared to maybe back in the days when you didn't have as much technology? Especially if you're a Georgia state trooper and you're out in a rural area, you've got a lot of danger, without that kind of technology nowadays.
Well,
and especially back then.
One of the things that I try to, and I will continue to try to invoke in the novels is to express to people the concept that state law enforcement is different in that it's one riot, one ranger. You're out there a lot of times, troopers, GBI agents out there by themselves enforcing the law, sometimes with no backup, sometimes with very, very little backup, or the backup is very far away. So that's one of the themes that you'll see as I continue to write, is that you have to be able to make decisions on your feet. You have to be able to think while things are going on around you, because you don't have the luxury of having a supervisor come up and say, "Oh, here's how we're going to handle this." So it is and so the technology has changed that a lot. One of the things I can remember very vividly is if we arrested a smuggler back in the '80s, we would empty their pockets and use a Xerox machine and copy all their papers. Well, now all of your stuff is on your phone.
Right.
So now the challenge is, can you get into the phone? And there's a lot of technology, a lot of evolving technology around that. And it's a cat and mouse game, because the phone companies or the phone vendors will try to add security features, and our challenge is to try to get around that security to get the information we need. And of course, there was a time when I could walk up to a car and put on a tracker, which was a great thing, because we were doing physical surveillance. We're following cars all around. So somebody invented these trackers that are GPS driven. Well, then the law changed, and now we have to get a search warrant, which is because of the technology, it's very voluminous. So we have this 40, 50-page search warrant that we have to write to get a tracker on a car. But it's still, the technology's there. It's just the evolution of how the courts look at it and how the public looks at it is evolving as the technology is evolving.
Mm-hmm. Well, you mentioned your writing and about putting some of this information in some of your novels. One of the things I love about reading novels is I want to learn something. And so one thing about your book here is I learned a lot about GBI and how they work and that sort of thing. So let's talk a little bit about your books now. You're a writer now, so how did you get interested in writing? And tell us about that kind of transitioned into being a published author, especially a self-published author, because I know there are a lot of people who are tuning in this morning, I can see, who are interested in maybe writing their own book, and they're wondering about self-publishing, traditional publishing. The latest figures I saw were that there were 4,000 books a day published now. And so how do you kind of break through all of that? So tell us your story as far as becoming a writer and publishing this book.
Well, so I have to go all the way back to childhood. Mm-hmm. I was a reader. I would on the way to school in the morning on the bus, I'd read, and I kept paperback books with me. And I guess back in those days, nobody looked to see what you're reading. So I was reading mysteries. I was reading Ian Fleming. I was reading a lot of Arthur Conan Doyle. I grew up on Sherlock Holmes, and so I was just a voracious reader. And that didn't really change as a state agent. I would be spending the night in motel rooms all over the state and sometimes all over the country, and so I always had a book with me, and so I always had an inclination that I wanted to write. Unfortunately, one of the biggest challenges for me was getting past my own self-doubt, my own ego.
Sure.
I tried to write 3 or 4 times. I would sit down and try to write the great American novel, and just really wasn't personally mature enough in that aspect mm-hmm. to do it. So when COVID hit, I had this idea kicking around in my head, the framework of this novel, and I had a lot of time to myself, so I started writing. And I guess, luckily I'd matured enough that some of the things that I was so careful not to reveal about myself and about my thoughts, right. I was kind of able to open up. So that changed. But the self-publishing thing was, I felt like that I needed to get a book under my belt. Mm-hmm. I needed to have something published, because if I didn't do that, I wouldn't grow. If you don't start, you don't grow. So what I wanted to do was make sure that I got something out. So I looked around. I found a publishing company through a friend here in Atlanta. Very easy to work with. Mm-hmm. You could literally do everything remotely, do everything electronically. I did go by once and just met with them. That's my old school nature.
Right.
But I wanted to get something under my belt. And I found that this is relatively painless. Mm-hmm. They offer editorial service. They offer everything you can imagine mm-hmm. from start to finish, and are very easy to work with. Mm-hmm. So they gave me a lot of good editorial feedback. Luckily, I didn't have to change the whole book around. So they were very gracious, though, in pointing out, well, maybe this line should be further down, or maybe you shouldn't say this, or shouldn't say it this way.
Right.
But not a lot of negative feedback, and so it was a very easy process. Mm-hmm. It ended up taking. I started the book in March, and part of that was I was working full time, so I couldn't just sit down and work at it like I wanted to. But it took almost a year and a half to get it published.
Yeah. And this is a hardback or a softcover book as opposed to an e-book.
Correct.
And so what was your thoughts about how you took that route versus an EPUB or going on?
Well, it is actually available as an EPUB.
Okay. So that's part of the service that your publishing company provided.
Yes.
Okay.
So you can opt out or you can opt in. You can do it either way. You can do it both ways. I opted to do it both ways. Mm-hmm. I'm not an ebook person. I like to hold the book in my hands. I'm old school, but I know that a lot of people like to read ebooks. Who like to, when they're traveling or when they're on the beach, whatever. It's more convenient. So I decided to do both ways.
Right. So marketing your book, I know we had talked earlier about something you did was put it on eBay.
Yes.
Of course, it's on Amazon and the traditional
Right.
e-publishers. But tell us about the eBay experience. Has that been something that has been successful for you?
It has been moderately successful. Part of the whole issue is the marketing. I'm not a marketing person, so I probably have not done the best marketing. But the quandary I was in was I have a lot of friends across the state and across the country who wanted signed books, and if I sell through Amazon, I never know. I don't know who bought it, and I don't know when it goes out. So I was thinking about ways that I could do it, and I had an eBay account. So I said, if I do it on eBay, you buy it, and I get a notice who it's from, and you can actually write me and say what you want written on it. And then I can sign it and put it in the mail and fire and forget.
So if I wanted to get Mountain Justice as a Christmas gift for some people, I could go on eBay, put your name in the search bar, and say, I'd like you to personalize this for my friend Bruce down in Mississippi or whoever. And that way they can get something that's very personalized that came directly, from you. So
I will give you a caveat. You have to search it by my name, by the name of the book, and say signed by author.
Okay, so
because there are other people selling my book.
Yeah.
Which I thought was, and the publisher warned me about this. They said other people will sell your book. They will sell it. They will try to discount it because they get a break if they buy X number. So I was a little surprised the first time I did the search, because I was going to send a link to my friends, and in fact, the first link I found was not to me.
Right.
So.
Right. I had a similar experience where on Amazon, look and see my books on there, and I would see something like a little paperback book, they're like $45 or $100. And so what happens is other people will get a copy of your book and they'll put it on there and they'll try to either discount it one way or, increase the price another way or whatever. So what's next?
Working on a story about a murder that I was involved in.
As an investigator, of course.
Yes, I have thought about it, but no. So it's a story. The core, and when I write, it's easy for me to write because I have a lot of experiences. But obviously, you start with a core. But in the real world, things aren't as succinct. They aren't as clear cut as you would like in a novel. So I'll deviate from the facts and I'll bring in little details from other investigations. So this was a Cherokee County murder. Man and woman were murdered in their home. And it turned out it was a contract hit, and so it was really complicated, but a really quick investigation. We actually had all three of them in jail within 24 hours.
Wow.
Of the people who were involved. But that's the core story. I'm working on that. I have some stories about the days when I was involved in drug smuggling, which was a lot of fun. It was Wild West back then, and chasing airplanes and boats.
Right.
But a couple of bank robberies that I was, the case agent on, and different things. So I've got several stories that I want to put out there. But again, what I recognized is my first novel I knew would be rough. I knew it would be. I knew it would need a lot of smoothing out. So I had this idea. But some of the things that I really want to tell, I'm holding off until I feel like I have more experience.
Oh, good. Till you get us readers hooked on your stuff. Good.
And so a lot of people have told me, other authors have told me, you're not going to really get much of a base until you get about 3 books out there. So that's sort of what I'm working toward.
Good. Anything else you want to tell our viewers, or any advice you want to give to writers, or somebody wanting to go into law enforcement?
Well, it seems like right now is not a great time to go into law enforcement. But I will say that it's a if you really want to give back, law enforcement is a great way to do that. But a lot of what we do in law enforcement is not necessarily enforcing the law. It's dealing with people's problems, and sometimes that's where things go wrong. But really, it's helping people, whether it's on the side of the road or broken down or whatever.
Right.
One of the most challenging things in my job, because I dealt mostly with violent crime or drugs, sort of split between the two. So one of the things that I got to do was deal with the victims or the victims' families.
Okay.
Which is very draining on you emotionally, but it's very productive for them to have somebody who can come to them and explain things to them and sort of walk them through the process.
Yeah.
So it's a good thing.
Great. Okay, the book is Mountain Justice. The author is Phillip W. Price. You can check that on eBay if you want your signed copy and Christmas gifts. And Phil, thanks for being with us today. Appreciate it very much. Mm-hmm.